Emerging Threats Hub. The world on fire. Iran, Ukraine, and the new great game.
What does it mean to win a war? Is it measured in bombs dropped or in treaties signed? Is it the collapse of an enemy government or the security of your own citizens? This week, the United States has spent more than $25 billion on ordnance alone, much more in a conflict with Iran that has now entered its 8th week. A fragile ceasefire, brokered by Pakistan, hangs in the balance, and the administration is facing a critical question from Congress and from history. What is the theory of victory? Welcome to Emerging Threats Hub. I'm your host, Sebastian. This isn't a show about breaking news headlines. This is a show about the architecture of global security, the underlying systems that create conflict, and the ideas that can build a more stable peace. Today, we're taking a holistic tour of a world that seems to be, frankly, on fire. We'll start in the Middle East with a deep diagnostic on the Iran war. We'll then look across the Atlantic at a transatlantic alliance that is fraying in real time. We'll examine the drone revolution that is rewriting the rules of combat, and we'll close by going under the radar to examine a silent, systemic threat that could reshape global conflict for decades: the new resource curse and the grievance economy. Our lens today is constructivist. We are not going to treat these conflicts as inevitable struggles for power. We are going to ask how the ideas and identities held by leaders in Washington, Tehran, Moscow, and Brussels are actually constructing the reality in which we live. Anarchy, as the theorist Alexander Wendt wrote, is what states make of it. Let's start with the war that is demanding the most blood and treasure right now.
A strategic checkup.
8 weeks, $25 billion in munitions, a fragile ceasefire, and an administration that refuses to use the word quagmire. The conflict with Iran is the defining security event of the moment. But what is it, really? Is it a campaign, a war, or a strategic blunder? Let's start with the numbers, because they tell a story. The cost of ordnance alone, $25 billion, is staggering. According to Defense News, this is burning through the Pentagon's munitions stockpile at a rate that is raising serious readiness questions elsewhere. When you spend that much on precision-guided munitions, you are not just fighting Iran. You are making a choice to not have those resources available for the Indo-Pacific, for Europe, or for any other potential flashpoint. Now, the ceasefire. It's real, but it's fragile. Pakistan brokered it, which itself is a fascinating piece of geopolitical chess. But a ceasefire is not a peace. It is a pause. And what happens during that pause matters more than the pause itself. The core strategic question, and the one that should worry every listener, is what a Small Wars Journal analysis calls the war without a theory of victory. What does victory look like? Is it the destruction of Iran's nuclear program? The collapse of the regime? A change in Iranian behavior? The administration's own goals have shifted from week to week. And here's the really uncomfortable part. The war appears to have strengthened the Iranian regime, at least in the short term. Nationalist sentiment rallies around the flag. The narrative of external aggression plays directly into the hands of the supreme leader, Ali Khamenei. The regime that the war was supposedly designed to weaken has been given a new lease on life. Meanwhile, a major constitutional debate is brewing. The War Powers Act requires congressional authorization for prolonged military engagements. The administration is arguing that the ceasefire stops the clock on that deadline. That's a legally contested position, and lawsuits are already being prepared. This is not just a foreign policy crisis. It's a domestic constitutional one. But let's apply our constructivist lens. Why did this war happen? A realist would say, great powers compete for influence, and military force is the natural expression of that competition. That's descriptive, but it's also fatalistic. It doesn't explain why this specific conflict erupted now. A constructivist would look at the identities involved. The current U.S. administration operates on a set of ideas that military power is the primary tool of statecraft, that American credibility must be projected through strength, and that adversaries like Iran are existential threats that cannot be negotiated with. This is not a law of nature. It is a choice to construct the relationship as one of inevitable confrontation. The Iranian regime has its own set of ideas, of revolutionary resistance, of standing up to the great Satan, of a unique Shiite identity that is under siege. These two identity sets collided. The war wasn't inevitable. It was constructed. The solution-oriented question we must ask is, can we construct a different reality? A real path forward isn't just about military escalation or withdrawal. It's about shifting the ideas that drive the conflict. That means, first, separating the regime from the population. The war is strengthening the regime. Any peace strategy must find ways to bypass that dynamic. Second, recognizing the energy dimension. This war has exposed the strategic vulnerability of fossil fuel dependence. Every dollar spent on renewable energy is a dollar spent on national security. The war is accelerating the renewable transition, but it's happening too slowly. Third, using the ceasefire to build a real diplomatic architecture. Pakistan's role is promising, but it needs to be expanded to include regional actors like Iraq, Qatar, and even discrete European-backed channels. The goal isn't just a pause, it's a new set of shared norms.
A new Iron Curtain.
From the sands of the Middle East, let's turn to the heart of the alliance structures that have kept the peace in Europe for nearly 80 years. And I have to say, the news is not good. The United States is withdrawing 5,000 troops from Germany. Simultaneously, President Trump has threatened to pull troops from Italy and Spain, citing a rift over the Iran war. This is not a minor diplomatic spat. This is a fundamental signal that the post-World War II security order is fracturing. But here's where our constructivist lens gets critical. A realist would say, of course, great powers pursue their own interests. Alliances are temporary. This is just the natural cycle of geopolitics. And that narrative, when repeated by pundits and policymakers, becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. If everyone believes alliances are temporary, they become temporary. The idea becomes the reality. Now, what are the Europeans doing? They are not waiting for the United States to change its mind. They are building alternatives. The United Kingdom is constructing a new Nordic naval alliance. France is testing its ability to step into a NATO leadership role. And the European Union, for the first time, has simulated the Lisbon Treaty's Mutual Assistance Clause, Article 42.7, which is the EU's equivalent of NATO's Article 5. This is Europe, preparing for a future in which the American security guarantee is no longer reliable. But there's a fascinating tension here, which is captured in a piece from Defense News. Even as the political relationship between Washington and Berlin sours, the military relationship is actually deepening. US and German commands are integrating. A US colonel is now sitting inside the German army command structure. What happens when political orders directly contradict military reality? That's a stress fracture waiting to break. Foreign Affairs ran a piece that the summary calls a MAGA fantasy, the idea that President Trump fundamentally misread the European reaction. He assumed, apparently, that after some initial complaints, the Europeans would fall in line. They haven't. Instead, they are constructing a new, European-centered security identity. This is a textbook constructivist moment, a change in ideas leading to a change in institutions, which will lead to a change in power relationships. The solution-oriented path here isn't about blaming one side or the other. It's about recognizing that the old architecture is crumbling, and new architecture must be built. For Europe, that means accelerating defense integration, investing in strategic autonomy, but doing so in a way that remains open to a rebuilt relationship with the United States later. For the United States, it means recognizing that alliances are not just instruments of power, they are sources of legitimacy and shared identity. Burning them for short-term political gain has long-term strategic costs.
No one is safe.
We've talked about strategy and alliances, but wars are fought with weapons. And the weapon that is reshaping the battlefield more than any other is the cheap, ubiquitous first-person view drone, the FPV. Listen to this statistic from the US Marine Corps. In less than 6 months, they went from having 0 FPV drones in their inventory to having 3,500 in half a year. That is not an incremental adjustment. That is a revolution. What does this mean for the future of conflict? Let me paint you a picture. In Ukraine, a country that has become the world's laboratory for drone warfare, the military is hiring 15,000 new drone pilots. They're creating what they call a kill zone of about 15 kilometers. 15 kilometers of deadly persistent aerial surveillance and precision attack. Every soldier, every vehicle, every position is potentially under observation and potentially under threat. But here's the twist that matters for global security. Ukraine is not just using drones. It is now exporting them. This is drone diplomacy. By sharing its combat-tested technology, Ukraine is building alliances and creating dependencies. It's using technology as a form of soft power, demanding things in return, like diplomatic support, from countries like Greece. This is a new model of statecraft. Now, let's bring this home. The drone threat is not just a battlefield problem. It is a homeland security problem. A recent interview with a European security expert warned that Europe is unprepared for drone attacks on critical infrastructure. Think about it. A swarm of cheap drones could shut down an airport, disrupt a power grid, or attack a chemical plant. The barrier to entry for mass precision attack has dropped dramatically. The offense is racing ahead, and the defense is scrambling to catch up. The US Navy is using artificial intelligence to counter Iranian mines. Romania is entering the American counter-drone market. These are positive signs, but they are reactive. The systems are being built after the threat has emerged. The solution-oriented question is, can we build a proactive defensive architecture for drone threats, the way we built air defense networks for manned bombers? This requires a shift in thinking. We need to move from a model of force protection defending military bases to a model of societal resilience, defending the critical infrastructure that keeps our societies running. That means investing in counter-drone technology, hardening targets, and creating legal and normative frameworks for drone use. Remember, the drone is not inherently good or bad. It's a tool. The ideas we have about how to use it and the norms we build around its use will determine whether it becomes a tool for security or a tool for terror.
The grievance economy.
Now it's time to go under the radar. This is the segment where we look at a story that isn't making headlines, but that could reshape global conflict for decades. This week, we're looking at something I'm calling the grievance economy. Foreign Affairs recently published a warning that the scramble for critical minerals, lithium, cobalt, rare earth elements, is going to reshape global geopolitics. The energy transition, which is necessary for our survival, will create a new set of resource conflicts. The countries that control these minerals will have new power. The countries that need them will have new vulnerabilities. But that's just one piece of the puzzle. RUSI, the Royal United Services Institute, has been analyzing the hidden economics of conflict. They've looked at how Houthi attacks in the Red Sea are being financed by a shadow fleet of tankers that evade sanctions, and how Russia's oil price cap is failing because of similar mechanisms. The war in Ukraine is, in part, being funded by the creative evasion of economic rules. And then there's the most systemic threat of all, the grievance economy, fueled by artificial intelligence. A piece from Small Wars Journal, and I want to credit the authors here. This is forward-thinking analysis argues that the coming wave of AI-driven job displacement will create a massive pool of economically dislocated, angry, and vulnerable people. This is not just an economic problem. It is a security problem. These populations will be fertile ground for extremist recruitment, for political violence, and for the collapse of social cohesion. Think about it. The Industrial Revolution created new social structures, new political movements, and new conflicts. The AI revolution will do the same, but at a faster pace. The question is, are our institutions ready? The solution-oriented path here is not to stop technological progress. That's impossible. The path is to build social resilience first. That means investing in education and retraining on a massive scale. Creating social safety nets that are not tied to traditional employment. Building democratic institutions that can channel grievance into political participation, not violence. And for the resource dimension, it means creating international frameworks for the equitable extraction and trade of critical minerals before the conflicts begin. The time to build the architecture is now, not after the war starts. Let's bring this all together. We started with a war in Iran that is costing billions and lacks a clear theory of victory. We looked at a transatlantic alliance that is fracturing, but also being rebuilt in new forms. We examined a drone revolution that is changing the very nature of combat. And we went under the radar to see the silent systemic threat of the grievance economy. The connective tissue here is ideas. The conflicts we see are not inevitable. They are the result of choices made by leaders and by societies, about identity, about power, and about the future we want to build. The constructivist lens tells us that we have agency. We are not prisoners of a tragic cycle of power politics. We can choose to build different institutions, different norms, and different relationships. But that requires effort. It requires paying attention, not just to the headlines, but to the systems underneath. It requires demanding that our leaders articulate theories of victory that go beyond military force. And it requires building the economic and social resilience that can prevent future conflicts before they start. The world is on fire, but the fire is not inevitable. The architecture of stability is built, brick by brick, by the ideas we choose to act on. Thank you for listening to Emerging Threats Hub. I'm Sebastian. If you found value in this episode, please subscribe, share it with someone who needs deeper context, and leave a review. It helps others find this kind of analysis. Until then, stay vigilant, stay curious, and remember, peace is not a destination, it's an ongoing construction.